I'm here with the lovely Cate Kemp, financial leadership coach from the control room, bookkeeper extraordinaire, and all-round good human being. Kate, welcome today.
G'day, mate. It's nice to be here.
Well, look, before we dive into it, maybe just tell if you could sort of, I know you and I know you well and what you do, but maybe a little bit about yourself, your journey, and where we are today.
Yeah, sure. So, financial leadership and performance coach. Like, what the hell is that, right? Look, I work with small businesses and I teach business owners how to be the CFO of their own business, right? So, I teach them to join the dots between work in the business and making a profit, and then join the dots between making a profit and actually making money. You know, the type you can take home and enjoy. And no one teaches how to do that, right? It's just like get a good accountant and go and sell more shit. And I know I've been a career bookkeeper for many thousands of years, and I just heard over in my career, why didn't my accountant tell me that? Why didn't my accountant tell me that? Why didn't my accountant tell me that? And when I'm hearing those sentences, it's always too late. It's always too late then.
Mm,
So
mm.
and
Often,
you and
often they're with us by then.
Yeah, you and I really connected over that, right? It was just like once it's too late, it
Yes.
hurts. And before it's too late, you don't know it's coming. And so that's why I sort of gave birth to the control room and developed this program, which is based on 25 years in financial control. And it's not hard stuff, right? It's not complicated for a small business owner to learn how to be the CFO and to then delegate instead of abdicate the financial control and the financial success to bookkeepers and accountants. You can't outsource financial success. You can't. That has to come from the top. That has to come from the founder and the owner. And while you absolutely can and should delegate financial operations, you just cannot outsource financial success. And so I teach business owners financial success, financial control, and I help them make more money. I think avoiding ending up in your office, Michael, avoiding the surprise BAS, or worse, the surprise tax bill, or the surprise insolvency event when you have a profitable business.
Mm.
And like business are going, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm profitable. How can I be facing an insolvency situation? And that's a really real thing. We're seeing it a lot at the moment.
Yeah, look, and I think that was the thing too, is that it's exactly that issue, is that, I had a conversation with the founders and owners of a very successful real estate business only last week. And their issue was exactly that. They had out of the blue a $1 million tax bill, which they weren't expecting. And look, partially it was due to the fact that their previous advisors had been a bit slack in terms of lodging things. And when they moved to a new accounting firm, they identified all these issues. But and this is what I want to lead into with you. And so we were able to get in with that, and they sold a bunch of assets, paid as much of it down as they could. But at the end of the day, there was still a balance there, and so we were able to get in because they were very concerned about credit reporting by the ATO, which is happening at the moment quite heavily. And we were able to get in, stay in front of that, because that was going to create all sorts of additional problems for them with their bank. But we're able to get in, stop that. We've got them into an arrangement that they can afford, and we're going to clear it. And now we're in the process of rebuilding their compliance with the ATO and actually get them out the other side, so we can actually then look at maybe some of the interest on there, the significant interest penalties that are on there that we feel there are grounds to remove. But the interesting thing, so it's a really good news story, and we're able to stay ahead of it, and we're able to sort it for them. But it was the lack of knowledge about that debt that really sort of struck me and struck them. And yes, it is the case that maybe there was some failure on their advisor, but they're the owners of the business, and they should know that they haven't been paying tax, and they should know that, what their tax should be. Which leads me into what I'm really fascinated to hear about from you, which is, I call it, I was thinking about how I would describe it, but it's the poor cousin of the financial reporting. Everybody, a lot of people don't get financial reports regularly. We get them regularly, but everybody goes straight to their profit and loss. And am I making money? And then I'll have a look at the bank. And if that all looks fine, happy days. But there's this other thing called the balance sheet. And I know you're very passionate about business owners as understanding and using their balance sheets. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure, sure. So, look, the balance sheet, I would say, is like your number one business hack. It is the easy. It's not a complicated document, right? It's your foundation statement upon which everything else makes sense. So, for me, the balance sheet is the context of every other report that you look at. But it's also the litmus test for every other report you look at, because if your balance sheet is not accurate and correct, well, neither's anything else. And so if you haven't checked that, you can't look at anything else. And I was just listening to you saying, surprise tax bills, like, and sure, was it a failure of their advisors? Why didn't my accountant tell me that? My response now, when I hear that, is, why didn't you ask? To your point, well, why didn't you ask? Because
Yes.
I, and
Yeah.
the easy response there is because I didn't know the questions to ask. And that's actually not really good enough when you're facing $1 million worth of debt, is it? You're kicking yourself when it's the easiest thing.
No, no.
Your balance sheet is the easiest thing to learn. And for business owners out there, I don't want business owners to learn how to be accountants or learn how to read balance sheets. But what I do want, deeply, is for them to learn how to read their balance sheet. Learn how to pick holes in it from 20 paces. Not anyone else's, just theirs. And when you get that one thing, right? You will never ever look at your business the same way again. You'd never make decisions the same way. You'll never get blindsided. You will never let your accountants and bookkeepers off the hook, because you would know if they're not doing their job, or if they were. You would have better conversations, your eyes would be open, and it's not hard to do. It's so not hard. It's not any harder than looking at your P&L. In fact, I would say it's a little bit easier than that. But nobody teaches business owners this one thing. Nobody teaches it.
A lot of the accountants who will be hearing this and listening to this will be clapping their hands for joy, because they would love their clients to have more financial literacy around this and to be looking at their balance sheet. So this isn't an opportunity for, business owners to, try and catch their accountants out. They're not doing it. It's quite the opposite. It's working closely with them and being able to say, hey guys, we're noticing here that the provision, and look, the one that we look at, and this is why I think why I really was struck by your conversation that we had the other day was, that if the balance sheet's where tax debt lives. It either falls in there as an actual liability or a provision if we know what's coming up. And so, again, if you've got business owners looking at that, then they're saying to their accountants, hey, listen, guys, I can see we've got a provision in there. Is that what we're looking at? Then they can actually physically provide for it by actually putting the money aside, which would be absolute joy to their advisors around all of this. And look, it does have that opportunity. If there's no provision in there, well, why isn't there? And what are we looking at, and so forth. But again, it avoids those surprises and avoids them needing to come to us.
100%. Your balance sheet, it's seeing what's coming before it happens, right? If your balance sheet is well maintained and what I call actively managed, well, look, there's your next 90 days cash flow right there. There's the blind side before it hits you. There's your next BAS, like, oh, my accountant told me my BAS was due tomorrow and it's $80,000. Like, I don't have $80,000 in the bank. Like, yeah, but your BAS balance been on your
Mm,
balance sheet for the last 120 days on a roll, every day. It's always there. How could you be surprised by that? Even if the form didn't come to you to
yeah.
sign till tomorrow, like, it's always been there and it's at your fingertips. So nearly every business now has a Xero or a Maya file, and they can open it at any time. It's always up to date, right? That's the beauty of the connected ledger, what they call it. It's easy to learn. It's actually
Yeah.
simple concept. You don't need maths. If you made it through primary school, you're good. You can add up and do sort of percentage ish. You're good. That's fine. That's all you need. You just need to learn it one time and then make sure it's managed. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. And Kate, it's interesting too because it got me thinking about we've had 15 new clients come through the door in the last 10 days. Everybody's really paranoid about getting everything done by Christmas, and so I said, well, the best way to do that is let's get you sorted with the ATO around that. And it's interesting that the other client that I was thinking about in sort of when I was sort of driving into the office today around this and what we're talking about is it was a media business. And look, this wasn't a failure of an advisor. This was actually one where the owner of the business, the director of the business, had taken his eye off the ball. Now, there was reasons why he'd taken his eye off the ball because there was a significant family illness over quite a number of years that had sort of really put him under a lot of pressure and I guess created other priorities. But again, he didn't he said, "Oh, look, I didn't know how much tax we had." And as it turned out, there was nearly $500,000 in tax there, which he was totally blindsided. He said, when I spoke to him, he said, "Oh, look, I think there's about 130 grand." But then when we did our review, it was almost $500,000, and he was shocked. But again,
Wow.
had he had good financial reporting, and even if there's everything going on, you can at least open up and have a look and go, hey, that's there. I understand that. And look, to his credit, he wasn't blaming anybody else but himself and saying, I own this. I'm getting the reports, but I'm not looking at them, and everything's a shock. And so, lodgements fortunately were going in, but just payments weren't being made because he was not aware of them, formally, because nobody had rang him up and said, hey, mate, you need to make this payment. But he had all the information there and just wasn't looking at it. And that would have made his journey, particularly over the last little while, much, much easier. And he's now got, in that, of that $500,000, there's over $100,000 in interest there, which we're now going to have to ask the ATO to. And I'm confident we can get there, but it would have been nice to have not had to do that. And so, we'll get him where he needs to be, and the business is safe and viable, and he gets to have a good Christmas and all of that. But it's been some stressful sort of times for him around this that were unnecessary.
For sure. And look, even while, if you're using Tax Assure, you've got a good chance of getting that interest back. In the interim, it's just money down the toilet. And if you haven't come to Tax Assure
Mm,
and you don't get that interest back, it's not even tax deductible interest anymore. Business is hard. Small business owners are the hardest working demographic in this country. They bleed, they pay other people, they skip their own salaries to make sure their team gets paid. And then to see the hard earned blood, sweat, and tears type money go down the toilet of ATO interest is soul destroying, particularly when it can so easily be avoided with basic education, just some training, just understanding how money works in your business. And business is first and primarily a financial model. And then financial is the last thing that seems to get managed. It's the thing you think your accountant's bookkeeper's doing. It's the last thing, not the first thing that you sort of jump into as a business owner. And like I said, I don't think this is
mm,
anyone's fault. There's just this culture in Australia where you sort of hire a bookkeeper and accountant and you just let them go. You can't even hire a lawyer like
yep,
that. You have to
yep, yep.
instruct the lawyer. And that's what I want to solve. That's what I want to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think the thing around that, Kate, too, is that, and again, it's why, we work closely with you. And uh, when I'm seeing businesses like that, I'm going to say, you've got to go and see Kate because I don't want to see you again. We're a very weird business. We don't like repeat customers. We like, great referrers that we work with, but we really want people to learn from this and then move on, and we never see them again, other than maybe to have a beer if we happen to bump into each other in the street, and they can publicly acknowledge that they may know me. But and I think that's the thing is that we all know the numbers, and people who have listened to this before are sick of hearing the $26 billion ATO undisputed ATO debt that's now officially $56 billion, and we believe certainly well in excess of $60 billion. Two-thirds of that is owed by small business. So there is I hate to use the term again because I think we're all sick of it about pandemic. But there is definitely a pandemic of ATO debt out there, and people, advisors like yourselves, you're the vaccine. You're the one that can, we can get in and put them on a ventilator and fix them and get them out of hospital. But the vaccine, so that they never see us again, is you, Kate, and people like yourself, because what you're able to do is to say, look, we know how we can avoid this, and we can teach you how to avoid this. Then you can really just focus on your business and know that with a 5 minutes, every day or so or week, keeping an eye on your financials and seeing where they're at, and they're not just looking at your bank account, because they can all tell you what's in the bank account. But can they tell you what the upcoming liabilities are? And that whole, well, my accountant hasn't told me. Well, you don't need to. It's in your records. It's in the things that are available to you 24/7.
Yeah, look, that's so true. And I know we worked with a plumbing company, and it was a husband-wife team, and there was debt, and there was sort of struggle all the time. And she was she was about to walk in more ways than one, and she said, like, this is it. I can't be involved with this. You need to sit down. And I took the husband on as a coaching client, and we sat down and we learned his balance sheet, and at the time the balance sheet was negative. And he's like, well, what does that even mean? I said, it means, well, your balance sheet is your context. You can't hide from this bad boy. It has everything you've ever done, all the wins and sins from your business is here in just one snapshot. And at the moment, if you add everything up for all of time to this point in time, the bottom line is negative, mate. And we call it the critical bottom line. And then when that clicked for him, and this is what I love, seeing the lights come on. And then he was like, oh, I get it. And then we start to tie the balance sheet back to the profit, and back to the utilization in the business, and back to the gross profit margin, and back to the cash flow. And then it all starts to make sense. And you go, oh, this business thing actually isn't so hard. I think it took us about 14 months, and we went from a significantly negative balance sheet, and it started going in the right direction. And very recently I had to ring them up and say, well, congratulations, you're in positive territory, and it's all upwards from here. And that's just, that lights me up when we see small business owners in really simple terms just go, that's it. This is how you make money from a business. That's not hard. I mean, it's not complicated. Business is hard, not going to lie.
No.
Business gets rough. But the concepts around financial success and making money, that again, you can take home and enjoy, that those concepts, that education isn't hard. And the balance sheet's good. We're going up. We're profitable. We're cash flow positive, and we're taking money home to our family. So that's just gold for me.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny too. It's while you're talking there, I was thinking it's really aligned with what we do, because one of the things we're talking about is one of our sort of catchphrases is that let's get the ATO sorted so you can actually focus on your business, and by that it's the actual running of the business, and it's the same with what you're talking about. If you can get the financial side of it sorted, and not sorted it by saying they're looking at it over there, but sorted by saying, I actually get it. I understand it. I know what I need to produce each month or each week or whatever it might be. And they know that bit's sorted, but sorted by them, not by a third party. Then they can really focus on, in your case, the plumbing business, growing the business, getting the right staff in, costing things the right way, all of those things that, are the reason people get into business most of the time. People get into business because they like doing whatever it is they're doing. No one likes doing the financial side of it or dealing with the ATO, but it doesn't have to be that painful, because, and particularly if you get the financial side sorted, you deal with the ATO and you never meet me, and that's brilliant. And so you're hopefully decreasing our client base, because there's plenty of people out there that need help, but we've got plenty of work. We're always going to be busy, but what we love is businesses that don't need us, and that's where you come in. So that's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, look, and Michael, there's no guarding against what I call life stuff. Life stuff happens. People get sick. Things like COVID go on. But if you really understand where your business actually is, I'm just thinking of another client. And I review balance sheets all the time. People go, "Can you help me with my business?" Sure, show me a balance sheet. Like, it's just the first thing anyone would ask. I'm looking at this balance sheet. I know this guy's got like 60 employees. And I'm like, well, where are your leave liabilities? Like, they're not here. So completely missing, even though there's
Mm.
60 employees. And so we go through and we go, there are $300,000 worth of annual leave entitlements. And so this was a pre and insolvency event, right? And had we not known that, we would have just driven straight into that wall. But because we found it out and we actually started managing that balance sheet coming up to this event, we went through a successful administration, as opposed to what would have happened if we hadn't, which would have been a down the tube liquidation. So again, just that it's so critical that the business owners actually understand this one document. It's one thing, and it's a really simple thing to understand, that changes everything. It just changes everything, and
Mm.
all of the clients that I work with, once that one light comes on, it just makes businesses take off. It's amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. Cate, that's been fascinating. I love working with you. I look forward to us doing more and more. And as I said, you keeping those businesses away from us so that they can actually really just fly, because I know you're amazing at what you do. And any business that gets your time is very happy. So thank you for joining us today. And yeah, we look forward to many more.
Oh, look, it's a great pleasure. And Michael, I just have to say thank you to you for the work you do at Tax Assure. You are by far one of our favourite partners, and the work you do in the community and for the business community is, just exemplary. So thank you.
Thank you.